Good morning. I know a lot of you are still coming in. I'm very delighted to have our guest speaker here this morning. In my previous life as a minister, I'm very much involved in hospice, palliative care, end-of-life care, and all important for us when we're thinking about our grandparents and people in our extended family. So this morning, Dr. Christopher Kerr is the Chief Medical Officer and Chief Executive Officer at the Hospice and Palliative Care in Buffalo. Born and raised in Toronto, Canada, Chris earned his MD as well as his PhD in neurobiology. Outside of direct patient care, Chris focuses in the area of patient advocacy. His passion is palliative care and a belief that such care should be out throughout the continuum of illness. Under Dr. Kerr's medical leadership, Hospice of Buffalo now serves 1,200 patients a day, half of whom receive services prior to hospice. Dr. Kerr's background in research has evolved from bench science towards the human experience of illness as witnessed from the bedside, specifically patients' dreams and visions at the end of life. Although medically ignored, these near universal experiences often provide comfort and meaning, as well as insight into the life led and the death anticipated. To date, the research team at Hospice of Buffalo has published multiple studies on the topic and documented over 1,500 end-of-life events, many of which are videotaped. This work was the subject of his TEDx Buffalo Talk, which has been viewed over 5 million times. It has been the subject of numerous reports around the world, as well as the BBC, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Atlantic Monthly, Scientific American, Huffington Post, and Psychology Today. It is also featured in a recent docu-series on Netflix called Surviving Death, and a PBS documentary called Death is But a Dream. Dr. Kerr's work has been published in a book called Death is But a Dream by Penguin Random House, which was released in 2020 in 10 languages. You can learn more about Dr. Kerr and the work of his team at his website. Dr. Kerr lives on a horse farm in East Aurora, New York. Let us warmly welcome Dr. Chris Kerr.
Morning. Feels a little odd. I did 5 years hard time in a boarding school in Canada. Never thought I'd be returning to one to talk to an audience so young on this topic of dying. The truth is, as a physician, I was trained to defeat the dying process, not to comfort or guide it, and I was ill prepared. And when I got to hospice, which I was just doing on the side while I was a cardiology fellow, I was struck that there was the death that I observed, which was this diminishing physically and the sadness, but that there was also the subjective side, the experiential side, and that these patients were having powerful inner experiences that I didn't understand. And what led to the research was frustration in trying to teach this to young doctors. I didn't know the source. I have no interest in paranormal or afterlife. It wasn't a religious mission for me. But clearly there was this mysterious process. There's this change in vantage point in dying that had profound meaning. What mattered to me and my colleagues, particularly in nursing, was it was obviously so therapeutic for the patient. So when people would say, well, there's no evidence for it, that's why we started the studies. And of course, when everyone thinks of a dying patient, you think of somebody frail or feeble-minded, so we did a smart thing. We pulled out a handheld camcorder and started to film our patients. And that's what became the basis of the film and documentary series. So I don't want to describe studies by going through the data. I'd rather show you the film and really highlight the results of our studies. The main point is this. In our first study, we interviewed people every day up until death. So sometimes 2 months would go by. And we gave them a standardized questionnaire. And one of the things we wanted to address immediately was this question, are these folks confused, medicated, deoxygenated? Are they in an altered cognitive state? And the answer was they weren't. We had to screen for delirium every day. We did labs, we looked at drugs, all those sort of things. As you're going to see, these people are acutely aware, they're incredibly insightful, and they're cognitively in command. So this wasn't a confused state. What we found was really interesting is they got closer to death, they had increasingly frequent of these events, and over 90% of people reported at least one such event. They would argue that it wasn't a dream, that it was virtual, it was a happening. You're going to hear them say that again and again and again. So we use the word dreams because it's the only nomenclature we have, but it's really not necessarily accurate. We measured realism on a 0 to 10 scale. The most common number picked was 10. So they were very adamant that this actually occurred. We looked at thematics. There was a menu of things you could pick. And what was fascinating was the closer people got to death, the more likely they were to see people who they loved and who they lost. And very specific people. People who nurtured, secured them, loved them unconditionally. So that may be one parent, but not another parent, one sibling, but not another. And that came through time and time again. And again, 90% were comforting. The ones that were discomforting happened to be some of the most transformational. We were talking before I came up. So World War II veteran, lived for 70 plus years with survivor's guilt. No amount of therapy, talk therapy, drug ever addressed his pain. And then very close to the end of his life, the soldiers come to him and say, "We're coming for you." So there's this notion that we've all been harmed for having lived. Regret, pain, sorrow, sadness, loss. These wounds seem to be addressed, very specific to the individual. This first video is a gentleman named Paul, and he really highlights some of the main features. So in these, he's 3 weeks before dying, by the way, and oops. Where possible, I'm going to include the family as well. A couple things. The people that are seen in the dream, very little is said between the dreamer and the people in the dream, but everything's understood. So if somebody lost their mother when they were 5, their presence is just understood. Again, these things don't deny the reality of death, but they instead validate the life that was led and kind of give them comfort going forward. Travel is really common. The metaphor of packing and getting ready to go, and Paul will talk about this. So this starts off with his daughter. I'm just worried I don't have sound. And I don't have sound.
He was a fun-loving, very smart, very interesting man, interested in a lot of things and a lot of fun. But Dad was always dreaming about Mom.
I probably had 15 dreams about her, maybe, somewhere in there. She always wears, I dream in color most times, and she always wears a beautiful light blue. It could be a suit, it could be a gown, it could be a dress, but it's always light blue. And a couple of times she's gave me the little beauty pageant wave, and a couple of times she sort of greeted, always with a smile. Only one or twice I've ever heard her voice, but she always kind of lets me know that she's fine. I get that feeling after a dream like that.
My father's experience seeing my mother in his dreams was always good. He never, to my knowledge, had a dream where he was sad or unhappy when he woke up after dreaming about my mother. It was always good. She was always smiling. His feeling always was that she was letting him know she was okay, that this was good and she was all right.
So I had this crazy dream. I'm packing goods, and I'm setting them for some reason up high.
I never had any doubt that what he was dreaming was accurate and that he was reporting it completely to us and enjoying his dreams. He had dreams about his friends in the military. When he was in the Army as a young man, right after my parents got married, he was drafted and sent to Germany, and he would have dreams about his friends.
I'm at Fort Devens up in Massachusetts, where they were forming this company that we're going to go oversee, a new company. And the guys are all young. They're like, I remember them, and I'm old. And I'm trying to tell them, guys, I've been here, I've done this, I'm not gonna do it again. And they're arguing with me. And that's a crazy dream.
Well, the more I thought about it, the more I appreciated the memories we had of Dad and his dreams, and that we did take some comfort from that. I definitely feel that having those memories of my father's dreams and him sharing them with us keeps us connected, most definitely. My father's dreams definitely changed how I looked at him and what he appreciated in life. Most definitely, he got it down to what was important. His buddies and my mom, and not in that order. Mom. In a way, it makes me think, I hope that that happens to me, that some of my positive memories as a child, as a young adult, maybe as a young mother, will come back again to me, and I'll be able to relive them. This is a part of the whole process, and that when patients, when their family members talk about a dream, listen, because there's a great deal to be learned from what they're sharing with you.
So these events don't normally include great insights, epiphanies, or pronouncements. They're not near-death experiences. They're actually dying. They aren't left with questions that require analysis or interpretation, but more just a sense of knowing. They dream of real moments, of having lived, of having mattered, and you're going to see that in this next video where the patient's just talking about being with the lost members of her family. And there's this overarching sense of being put back together again, of being made whole.
Tell us about the dreams.
It's very hard to pinpoint because they were so real. In all these years, my husband's been dead and my daughter.
And when did your daughter pass?
7 years ago.
Okay, at the age of 37?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And your husband died?
61.
61, okay.
I have seen them, not their face, not their clothes, but I knew it was them. But there was nothing really remarkable to define that that was Dick or John. But the other night, I fell right into a sleep. We were like sitting at the kitchen table, laughing. I could see their faces. I could tell it was their clothes. We were laughing, we were talking, we were eating. It was like a regular Sunday dinner night.
That's wonderful.
It is. And then Monday night, the same thing happened. But the same identical thing. We're laughing, we're talking, we're having a ball.
How did it make you feel?
I woke up Monday morning and I went, was that real? And I said, that was real. That was really real.
It happened.
We were sitting there as much as we were sitting here.
Okay. Have you ever had a dream that was that vivid?
No.
No. That was the most vivid dream. And we hear this a lot, and it's very hard to tell whether it's real or it's a dream. Yeah.
It made me feel like that whole 12 years had never existed.
12 years, that's interesting. 12 years since he's been gone. Okay. Because it was so real that he was there in the present.
And 7 years since my daughter was gone. Mm-hmm. It was like we were always together, never separated.
Yeah. How does it make you feel about the prospect of dying? How does it change your view?
I'm not afraid of dying.
Mm-hmm. Does it make you think you're going to see them?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
If I quit swearing.
If you what?
Quit swearing.
Oh, you're worried you're going to end up in the wrong place. I have a feeling you're okay. It's interesting that you can be in a dying process and at the same time feeling very much alive, right? And that made you feel alive.
Okay.
So dying, as witnessed by Paul and Florence, is really this paradox. She dies 5 days later, by the way. So they're physically declining, yet emotionally and spiritually, they're very much vibrant and very much alive. And we actually did a study looking at post-traumatic growth. So in this negative experience like war or dying, could there be positive gain? And what we found was that people were actually gaining insight and understanding right up into the last days of living. In other words, you don't stop living because you're dying. Although we all can relate to the Dylan Thomas refrain, fighting the dying of the light, our patients actually aren't fighting and they aren't showing fear. They're actually fighting towards, not against. And what they're normally fighting towards is those they've loved and those they've lost.
Tell us.
So formal studies, unfortunately, often exclude people who are cognitively different, people with Down syndrome, dementia, etc. And medically, unfortunately, we talk about them in terms of their deficits. We measure their cognitive scores, etc. What gets lost in that, tragically, is that these are people who have emotional lives, personal histories. And they're at the end of life, they're very much there and present. The following video is of a woman named Sue. And she's talking about the dying days of her mother, Irene, who suffered from very advanced dementia and was living in a nursing home in Buffalo area. And Sue, the mother, is going to start talking about seeing her husband, who was deceased, named Gary. And again, this captures this overarching theme, as one would expect. Escalating psychogenic distress, approaching death, you're going to hear just the opposite. So this is Irene.
So there was a lot of talk about, I had a dream last night and Gary was there, or Gary came to visit me, or we had dinner together. And she got to the point where she didn't even talk about it in terms of dreams. She talked about, I had dinner with your dad and Gary last night. That was not every day, but probably 2 or 3 times a week within the last year or 6 months.
Pretty frequent.
Pretty frequent. And she was very animated about it, very happy. And she didn't even talk about them as dreams. To her, they were something that happened last night. So they made me feel wonderful, because as I was getting off the elevator and thinking, I'm wondering what we're going to talk about today, because sometimes she didn't remember what they did during the day while I was at work, or maybe who else was there, but she always remembered her dream or vision or whatever she had. And when I saw her that day, I was like, Mom, why did you go outside? You never go outside. You know, somebody's supposed to go with you. And she looked at me like, well, I was going to meet your father. And I said, well, where were you going? How were you going to get there? And she just kind of looked around. Well, that wasn't the issue. The issue was that she was going to meet him. So then I didn't know what to say at that point, and I said, well, where were you going? And she said, well, we were going to Niagara Falls to get married. Life was different for her those last couple of months, because she had like something to talk about, something to look forward to, and those dreams were pepping her up, were making her happy, were making her almost look forward to go to sleep, which I think is great. Seeing that and being a part of it is a gift. And it was a gift for me. And I think it's a gift that should be shared. At the end of our life, there's a lot of spiritual, emotional work that is being done, and changes that are happening that, I don't know, are we too afraid to recognize it, or you think there's not enough time, or whatever. But I think it's as important, if not more important, than the physical things that we have to check off on the chart.
So again, instead of escalating distress, she's actually re-experiencing the best day of her life, which was her wedding day. And what she was doing was she was trying to break out of the nursing home to get to Niagara Falls.
So there was.
So children aren't included in our formal studies, but we've published a lot of case reports. As this beautiful Dickinson poem refers to, this notion of faith anew, that children may not have a reference point for mortality or death, and they may not know somebody who has died. but typically they know animals that have. And the distinction between a human and animal world is less obvious, and they don't make that distinction. And the presence of the pets or lost animals often means the same thing to them, that they're not alone and that they're loved. The following is of a patient I cared for. She was 13 at the time. Her name was Jessica, and she's going to see her deceased dog, Shadow. Her other fear, wound, concern that had to be addressed was she was raised by a single mom, so who was she? How was she going to be without her mother? And then she starts to see her mother's friend. So this is Jessica.
Mary is my mom's, one of her best friends that she passed away from leukemia, and
How long ago?
2005.
Okay.
And I think I was pretty close to her,
Uh-huh.
and she was very close to my mom. She was nice. And what happened was I seen her in my mom's room, and I was just coming up the stairs and going into my room, but I stopped because I seen something at the corner of my eye, and she was playing with my mom's curtains. And she had her favorite shirt on, my mom told me, because I told my mom it was gray and blue checkered shirt, like a flannel shirt that she had on. And she was playing with her curtains, and my mom's phone was charging, and she was looking down at my mom's phone, and I told my mom that, and my mom was pretty shocked, and I said, see, she's probably happy that you did a good thing, and she's coming to say hi. And I had a feeling that she was just coming to tell me that you're gonna be okay, everything's fine, but she didn't look at me. She was just looking, but I had a feeling if I called out her name, she would look at me, but I didn't want to scare my mom.
How did it make you feel? What did you get from her? What did you feel from seeing her?
I felt a sign of relief
Yeah.
and happiness because she was a very strong person, and I know that I'm strong, and my mom tells me all the time that I'm like her.
And you told me that you thought that, oh Mom, I saw an angel. That's how you
And I
said you
thought
felt,
I
and you
saw
said,
an
felt peace,
angel.
and then
I
you were
felt
able to go to
peace.
sleep.
And that I was able to go to sleep.
So it was really comforting.
That was comforting, yes.
You weren't afraid.
I wasn't afraid of it at all. My dreams that I have are good dreams now, which I dream about my old dog Shadow that has passed away, and I see him, and he's in a good place, and he's running, he's having fun, but then again he runs away and I never see him again. I feel like it's his meaning of saying goodbye. I have an occasionally where he comes to see me, to have a feeling to have him say it's okay, that I'm in a safe place now.
He comes with a meaning for you, and
Yeah,
that meaning
we
is.
were close.
And
Even though I didn't like him half the time because he would always be on my butt, but I still loved him. Yes, I do have to sort out what's real and what's imagined. I usually just try to lay there in my bed and try to reenact that dream and just think about what just had happened to wake me up.
Yes.
But I do get afraid because I see how dark my room is, and I look on the ground, and the one night I happened to see like a long black thing,
Yeah.
and that was him by my bed. Yeah, and then I went down to the ground and went like that, and it looked like his head went up, and then he was gone.
Okay. So you do things when you wake up to check to
If
see.
they're really there.
Yeah.
I feel that meaning is meaning of love, and that they're there and they're always going to protect you.
It's funny because he doesn't say anything to you.
No, dogs don't talk.
No, but dogs give messages.
Yeah, they give you a message of heal and love that you're okay.
Okay. So Shadow.
That's Shadow. Mary.
This is a reminder that our research, we've actually discovered nothing new. It's more reclaiming something that's been lost, but it really has always been integral to other belief systems and cultures around the world. The woman on the left is Lynette Walworth. She's a 3-time Emmy Award-winning filmmaker, a world expert on virtual reality. And the gentleman is Sergio, who's a chief in the Amazon. We're working on a project, and what she's doing is she's coupling the indigenous belief systems of the people in the outback in Australia in the Amazon, and coupling with our work. So these experiences have always been described across time and cultures, but obviously less recognized through a medical frame. But when medicine fails, death is what it's always been, which is a very human experience. In the words of Sergio, he said, "We are sad when someone dies, but we do not fear death." He's also an incredible painter. And you see, we published this case here where the children are seeing these pets. So one day we're on a Zoom call, and he shows up this picture. And it's a little girl after her death, and she's going on a journey again. Travel is seen in about a third of the cases. And this thing is magnificent, it's this big, and he's holding it up. And then he flips the painting. And the dog is in the reflection of the water. So the idea is the child, and I thought, geez, did you read my book? And he said this is what all of their children leave with one of their pets. Do we have time for one more quick video? Okay. So we've done a lot of studies looking at how this affects how the bereaved view the loss of their loved one. And long story short, what's good for the patient is good for their loved one. This is Jennifer describing the end-of-life experiences of her partner.
So this is the one and only picture that exists of Patrick and I that was snapped by my niece at a wedding, because neither one of us are overly photogenic, and it just wasn't our style. And this picture, because we did not live together, we each owned our own home, went back and forth for 15 years on each other's mantles. Patrick didn't cook with one single exception of making his grandmother's sauce, which he did, I want to say, about every 4, 6, 8 weeks through the entire 16 years I knew him. Patrick was the only member of his family that knows how to make the sauce. And for all the years I knew him, he insisted something was missing.
After his grandmother had passed.
After she had passed, and she had passed well before I had ever met him. I even tried to help him make it once, and I got banned from the kitchen because he insisted that an Irish woman was no way could ever make old-fashioned Italian sauce like Grandma used to make. Fast forward to, this would be the Sunday before he passed. He woke up in the morning, and I couldn't get him to eat. He wasn't hungry, total loss of appetite. And I'm like, baby, we gotta make you something for breakfast. What do you want? He goes, I'm full. I said, Pat, you had a snack pack pudding yesterday. You're not full. And he's like, oh, no, I ate with Nana Dolores last night. As real as I'm sitting here, he believed he made sauce with his grandmother the night before, said he could smell it, he could still taste it, he was full from it, and she showed him after all these years what he had done wrong, which is the very last step before you take it off the burner was to add a teaspoon of sugar. It was so very real for him, to the point, there I am, putting on sweatpants, driving to the grocery store, because we spent the next 7.5 hours, because that's how long it takes, making his grandmother's sauce that day. So, and he was so sick, and it was the only day I was ever allowed to help him. As he sat on the bar stool, and, well, let's say was very strict with the orders of the sauce, and we kept bringing the pot over, so there are certain things only he could do. We made the sauce, he added the sugar. Last time Patrick ever ate. Every morning he woke up saying, is today the day I'm gonna die? And I said, you'll go when you're ready. And he was ready.
He was ready. And you knew he was ready.
And I knew he was ready from this. I think this is a man who is at peace, and very honest, if your last dream in life is about spaghetti sauce, there's nothing more peaceful than that. It didn't appear to be a memory. To him, it appeared that he was participating. And that's one of the things I found very different.
Did that dream help you accept that reality further?
Absolutely.
Yeah?
Absolutely. And not only the reality that he is gone, it's made me think of maybe there is something out there after we go.
Thank you.